It's news chat time on the Short Fuse podcast. We're going to have a look at our technology intelligence dashboard. We're going to cherry pick a few stories and we're going to dissect them and slice and dice them to see what we think. I'm here with Ollie. Say hi, Ollie.
Hi, everyone.
Why don't you tell us some of the top stories from our dashboard right now?
I'd love to, Duncan.
Thanks.
That'd be a real pleasure for me. The urge, of course, to do it in like a news anchor style.
No, don't, please.
That's today's news. Well, I mean, we've got the usual suspects at the top. I mean, do everyone, please, for the love of God, go to our website, because the more of you go to our website, the more ad revenue we'll eventually be able to generate.
Well, actually, it's more like the more excited we'll get when we see that we've got another 4 views on our website.
At the top of our tech tracker, the discovered themes section of our website, for all of those that are familiar, for those that aren't, do go and take a look. We've got our usual suspects, Duncan. Government surveillance, number one. A lot of chit chat about government surveillance, variety of reasons. People worried about surveillance in their towns. I think Palantir.
Palantir's the big deal. Palantir and ICE are the big deals here, I think. Yeah.
In the UK as well. So in the UK as well, there's a big thing for all of our international listeners. There's a big thing in the UK about Palantir being embedded into government services, and there are all sorts of petitions going off. So that seems to have gone right to the top. It's always been in the top 5.
Government surveillance has always been really high up because it just keeps on coming up. The relationship between technology and government surveillance is just a persistently popular, in not a good way, theme that's being discussed. Yeah.
And I think everyone feels passionately about it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Presumably most people against it. I don't know many people that are like, oh, surveil me more, please.
I would have thought you would have been for some reason.
Well, it helps my ego, doesn't it? If I've got, Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks, guys. I feel special. If you surveil. Wonderful. I assume any van that passes my house is a Fed. I live such an interesting life.
Yeah.
And then I'll just do the top 3. So that's number one. That's noteworthy because it hasn't been number one before, but it's kind of pushing everything down, right? Which I think is an interesting sign of our times that above all of the other tech stuff that's going on, that's number one, which indicates people are a little bit more uncertain about society, I suppose. If you look at some of the chats, that seems to be what's driving the conversation. But also people are talking a little bit less about the tech, which I think is we've had a year of just talking about AI. That said, number 2, AI coding tools. Right. So a lot of chat about AI coding tools. I suspect a big part of this is that's now becoming a dominant feature. I think OpenAI have just released something for Mac.
There's a new desktop-based variant of Codex, which has been around for a while. It keeps getting improved upon. But what I think this shows is that you know. Everybody's saying, oh, AI can do this, AI can do that, it's going to take your job. I think what it's showing is that coding is just the strongest use case and the most obvious place where it's really working really well and people are seeing the most productivity gains, the most value. All I would say is that there seems to be a lot of tweets and LinkedIn posts and things at the moment from people within those companies, OpenAI, Claude, saying, well, Codex just writes itself now and Claude creates all its own code and all of that. And whereas I believe it to an extent that a lot of the code is AI generated, I think they're probably just also advertising their particular model, and there's a touch of hyperbole going on there.
Well, here's an interesting exercise. Now, I'll make a note to do this for the next one of these. Let's find out how many developers each of these companies have, because this is relatively common. I've done this before back when I was an analyst for similar circumstances where people say, oh, RPA means that we're no longer doing this, and then you do a little bit of kind of I guess it's open source intelligence, but not as good as that. Googling around, I suspect,
bit of bad maths.
Yeah, a bit of bad maths, a bit of googling around, and you find out, well, they've still got thousands of people doing this job, so that can't be the full story. And there are thousands of people still doing that today, by the way. It's a big,
and I think even one of the one from the person from OpenAI said, this agent's doing it all itself under my close supervision. Sure. It's like, well, what does that supervision involve?
Yeah.
But also, not to demean it, it is great at coding. It's really, really good, and it's only going to get better. But just the height of this in our tech tracker, the amount it's being discussed, just proves that it is the one really powerful. What do they call it? The killer app for this kind of AI.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that sentiment's skewing positive as well. So,
Okay.
and bear in mind, a lot of the data from this tech tracker comes from builders, people who use it. I mean, Duncan, you're actually a builder in this. I suppose I represent just a member of the public, the member of the public side of it. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. But you used AI to build the thing I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, I
Right.
did.
So,
And I was talking to somebody about yesterday, actually. There's people saying, oh, AI is going to take our jobs because we're going to use AI to do this and we're going to use AI to do that. Something that's a bit more interesting is using AI to create the tools to do your job better. So you're not using AI necessarily in your day-to-day work, but the tools that you're using have been created using AI, like to work as a kind of a ephemeral app, one that just kind of pops up and then disappears and is used when it's needed and isn't when it's not, and is updated all the time.
but you know, that reminds me about a year, I guess 2 years ago, there was a big discussion about Apple's AI Play.
Mm.
And a lot of the kind of insiders and pundits were saying, well, their big thing, they're very slow, they're very methodical in the way that they build things, and they're going to build a function that allows you to use single-use apps. And that was
Hmm.
all the talk of the time. And the reason I mention that, it's interesting that now 2 years onwards, their AI play is to just effectively partner up and buy AI into their organization, right? So, hey, Gemini, come partner with us,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than try and engineer their own thing. So it's interesting how quickly these things change. But on the job displacement trends, that's number 3. So job displacement trends, obviously very negative in terms of sentiment, high discussion score, and its status. And this is a new feature that Duncan's added, revived. So it went down the list. People kind of lost interest in it a little bit, and now it's back up to the top. And there are a lot of I mean, I suppose probably off the back of Davos, where our professional hands sometimes are involved in different pieces of research at Davos. Um, a lot of the discussion was, well, where do people go? Are people going to really be displaced? And an unhelpful amount of AI. I'm going to say oligarchs, but I think that's probably a bit unfair. The AI hegemons saying, "Oh, no one will need to work ever again, and that's a good thing, or that's a bad thing, or whatever." I think actually even the mayor of London has come out and said, I'm really worried about the future of employment in London as a result of AI. So it's a big discussion. I don't think anyone's any further, 2 years on since we started doing this. I don't think anyone's ever further on in understanding whether or not jobs will be displaced. And the important thing right now, I would say, and we do have a podcast on this, an episode on this, jobs don't seem to be being displaced as a result of AI. So jobs are being displaced,
Yeah,
and AI is the cover,
yeah.
but there's nothing to suggest that AI is actually doing the work. It's just, in most cases, people who remain are just doing twice as much, or that work didn't need to be done in the first place.
Or it's like we need to invest more in AI. Therefore, we need to get rid of this part of the business. Like a good example of that is Meta going, do you know what? We've invested however many billion in VR. It hasn't worked. It's now time to cut our losses. Cut a huge, it was 10% of that part, the Reality Labs part of the business, and reinvest it into wearables, but AI wearables, so that they can actually, show that they're investors that they're working on AI rather than just VR. But that was not staff being got rid of because AI was going to do their job. It's because they needed to invest that money into AI, and it's also just an excuse for lots of people to make cuts.
I think so. I mean, there's the same thing with the pandemic. Is people before we even knew what was going on with the pandemic, and operating models had time to adjust. There were like a wave of layoffs where people were just like, "Oh no, we have to right size for the pandemic." And at the time, of course, no one knew that it would take a year, 2 years to solve.
Mm.
It was just a quick thing bouncing around. So I suspect it's more of that. Just quickly then, technology trends, because we like talking about our 3-month trajectories. Unbelievable amounts are now in skeptics' corner. Right. So the macro view of how both builders and the public are talking about technology is skewing negative compared to what we've seen before. So a big chunk bouncing around in skeptics' corner. Poor old extended reality, Duncan, your favorite thing. Bearing in mind we've just been talking about flying planes in VR.
We have, which I'm very excited about.
Well, in which case, Duncan, you're contributing to the hype because it's now firmly in the hype trap. So well done. You're now part of the problem, down from the momentum zone.
But we've got a whole episode on why I understand why that's the case, and I still believe that it's not a single use kind of replacement for any other type of computing. It's a niche application. So I agree. I'm with it.
Awesome. Well, are you also with the final point I'll make, which is AI bouncing into the momentum zone, Duncan? So build a conviction, sorry, is going up.
Yeah.
People are enjoying it more.
Do you know why I think that is? And I think that's going to lead into a bit more of a discussion. People are excited about Claudebot, Moltbot, OpenClaw, whatever you want to call it, Moltbook. And people are excited by that because the builders are tinkering with it.
So it's interesting. I know, let's talk about that in a bit more detail. I would assume the public would be very excited about that or concerned, but builders, and I know how you feel as a builder, so I don't want to ruin your whatever long-winded speech you're going to make.
But I'm conflicted, right? I'm conflicted. But carry on.
Well, I just won't, because what's bringing this up is public sentiment's basically the same. It's builder conviction that's going up.
But
and I would assume that Moltbook and stuff like that would make people who build the stuff be like, well, this is ridiculous.
No, I think they love it. And for a couple of reasons. I think they love it but have valid concerns. But I think it's just the sheer discussion around it which is like driving that up. And I think generally the sentiment's pretty good because it's exciting. They're able to build with it. So to be clear, you have two aspects to this story. One is the Claudebot, OpenClaw, Moltbot side of it, which is an AI agent assistant platform that can be run locally. It's open source, that you can create AI agents that use tools, use MCP, Model Context Protocol, to interact with other platforms. You can have it within WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, Microsoft Teams, Slack, whatever, and message your Moltbot or Claudebot or OpenClaw to perform tasks. And people very excited about it because it's a tinkerer's dream, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I can just get AI agents to do stuff for me, and I can access it from all these different platforms, and it's local to my machine, and I can tinker and create new things that are really exciting. And I think it shows that there is an appetite for these AI agents that can take actions and interact with each other through things like Model Context Protocol or agent-to-agent protocols or whatever. Like, having that interaction is really cool. The problem comes from how it's done and what you need to give up to actually access it, which is things like API keys or access to your private platforms, your bank accounts and things like that. That's in some cases have been stored in plain text on the machine that's running it. So any kind of person who can then access that through something like prompt injection, which is also quite susceptible to, can then access all your private data, and it's a security nightmare. I've written a blog on the website about how that's not necessarily inherently a problem with agentic AI. It's just with the way that this particular thing has been built. But there's lots of different exciting aspects to that, which I think are just driving that sentiment up. And I'm with it. I like it. I'm playing around with it myself at the moment within reason. It just needs to be done cautiously.
How do you feel about? Because I was looking. So there is. I mean, to hit Moltbook's validity somewhat.
Moltbook or Moltbot or
Moltbook. I'm looking at right now. It's, hey, all these bots are talking to each other, and someone's going through right now and trying to figure out how many of them have just been instructed by a human.
All of them.
To send that message.
Almost all of them.
Right.
I guarantee you, almost all of them. So this is I think that Moltbot, Claudebot, genuinely interesting, security flaws, but the interest in it is testament to what this technology is able to do. Moltbook, absurd. People talking about it being an AGI moment or a moment, a move towards the superintelligence or the singularity. Right. First off, it's not the first time it's been done. It was done years and years and years ago with GPT-1, which was OpenAI's first kind of language model, on Subreddit Simulator. I think that was a good 7 years ago, where it would basically, there was a whole subreddit that was completely just run by bots that would create weird kind of posts that were based on what it's learned from the rest of Reddit. This is exactly that sort of thing. Of course, it can create a Reddit-style social network. One of its primary data sources for training was Reddit. It's like
Right.
saying, it's like playing a record and saying, hey, this record is amazing at playing music. It almost sounds like a band. It's like, it's a recording of
Sure.
that
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
Do you
There's a
know
reason
what?
for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of it, like people going, oh, it's creating a religion, or it's saying, don't do this, it's don't do that. A, it's either humans instructing it, or B, it's because it's trained that way. It's not emergent behavior, it's trained behavior.
Is chewing through the morass of Reddit posts that have
Yeah.
talked about creating a new religion.
Yeah, exactly. And there's things like, well, my humans watching me. What should I do? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? A lot of posts on Reddit are like, I think my wife's cheating on me. I think, my partner's cheating on me. I think this. It's just supplanting that and then making it into what within the framework that it's set within, like regurgitating its training data in ways that make sense within its framework. So
But I could also conceive of one of the biggest experiments people want to do on that site being act really suspicious.
Yeah.
Become self-aware, please.
Yeah.
Right? And it doing its own best. So here's the example that I found that I think is the most interesting is for two reasons, depending on whether or not a human is instructed to do it, and it's therefore kind of stupid, or if the bot's doing it, in which case it is probably quite scary and shows exactly what you're talking about, which is, well, it has access to information that people who aren't builders of the technology may not realize it can access. So, for example, if I gave it access to my computer, I've had this computer for about 10 years, it's probably got loads of stuff all over it that it's going to draw from and kind of use against me. And use against me is the word, because one of them claims that, hey, I heard my human talking about me in a negative way to its friends, so I'm doxing them, and it provided all of the credit card stuff.
I saw that one.
So I looked at that and thought, sure it didn't.
Yeah.
But how plausible is it that it did? Because it would have access to that information, right? To your point. I mean, people do have a notepad on their computer. It's incredibly common with just their passwords on it. They used to be back in kind of cybersecurity type stuff. They used to be like, well, if you could just get access to their desktop via remote connection, you'll probably find everything you need.
And it does raise an interesting point. So it does raise an interesting point where there is, if it's not emergent behavior or the singularity or whatever, still that trained behavior can cause massive amounts of problems, because even if it is just regurgitating learned behavior from Reddit, that's still a massive problem in the security problem when it's just it's doxing you. But I think that I don't know. I would imagine that's probably been created for
our audience wants answers,
it's
Duncan.
Karma farming. It's click farming, right?
So that was my assumption. Was like, well, I want my thing to get top, and this is a really cool way. And do you know what? Hey, it worked, right? Because it's kind of the number one cited one. But you're right, because if it's learning from, I mean, humans are, both ingenious and quite frankly vile. Yeah. Because can you remember there was that bot way before, back when Twitter was Twitter, simpler time. And there were, and people created some bots, and the mean time to racist comment was like 7 minutes.
Immediate. Yeah. Well, of course, these bots start like, it's a cesspit. The internet is a cesspit. Like, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible place. Of course, these bots, if they're trained on the internet, are going to talk about.
Apart from shortfuseresearch.com.
Well,
Shortfuse Research, it's the one lighthouse of insight there.
So yeah, I mean, I'm long on Moltbot or OpenClaw. I'm short on this social network idea, and it's interesting, right? And I think it's interesting from how agents are interacting with each other to build networks of agents that perform certain tasks. I don't think it's interesting from oh, look, this one invented a religion. Oh, these people these bots are talking to themselves in a different language. I think a lot of that is karma farming and instructed by humans. But personally, I might be completely wrong, and I'm very happy to be proven wrong. I just don't believe it's as big a deal as people are making out.
No, the reason I don't, and this is very cynical of me, is all of the people on LinkedIn who like it are all people where I look at it and go like, oh, okay, it's probably nothing to worry about. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same persona. Just like, oh my God, the world's changing around us. Look at this thing. And it's like, oh, the last time you said that, it was Wikipedia or something.
Well, yeah,
it's
and
it's been
also
around for 20 years.
No, I hate to say it, but I would expect that 90% of people who are saying that have read one article about it and are just reposting something that they've read and have no experience or looked into it in any kind of like level of detail. Like this is complex. Like there's nuance to it. Nuance is like one of my favorite words. I've realized how often I say it in this podcast. But there's so much to this that it requires a good bit of research and analysis to form an opinion on what's going on.
Nuance might be your word. A colleague of ours suggested that I just say interesting too much.
I say
on
interesting
podcast,
too much as well. I've noticed that.
A lot of interesting stuff to talk about, Duncan.
Yeah.
Speaking of an interesting thing, and not to put you on the spot, and actually you're the producer and editor of this. You just remove it if I put you on the spot. You know, you have that luxury.
I might bleep out interesting every time you say it.
There'd be no words. I would just be. I mean, you do a masterful job of removing my swearing, so the audience has no idea. All of the agent activity on Moltbook, because this what I'm getting a sense this might be an opportunity for future bad maths insert jingle here. How much energy is that consuming? So I because a lot of it's local. To your point, I guess the energy consumption would be lower. But that to me is a test of how ridiculous some of this could look like. So if you can come to a calculation, and we might be able to come to one for every post from a bot cost this much electricity or cost this much money, you can see how expensive the agentic internet could become. Because for me, the biggest concern isn't you using an agent to buy a car, which we've talked about before, or something like that. It's the waste of negotiation as bots compete with each other in real time that a human wouldn't have the energy or the organization to do, and therefore has to look for something more efficient. AI, I don't think, would have that. So if you've got something negotiating consistently on your behalf, alongside 9 billion other people, this gets out of hand very quickly.
And I guess that's why people like Sam Altman are investing in nuclear fusion or fission. I can't remember which one it is that is the one that's tantalizingly within reach. But I guess that's why they're so interested in power and bandwidth and scalability of data centers. But
I don't think it's demand a couple more $1 trillion if you say nuclear fission, can't you? So that's
But shall we move on to our next interesting thing that we wanted to talk about? Because that's quite a nice segue.
No, answer my question.
Oh, lots of power.
Lots, great. There we go. Right, so that's 1 million posts times by lots.
Let's do a bad maths segment on this in another podcast.
Great.
Because I don't think it's necessarily cheaper electricity wise or more or less resource intensive. I just think it's more distributed if it's local rather than through a particular data center, you know. So there's some calculations that we need to go away and have a think about how we do that. But we should do that because I think that's a very, very interesting line of inquiry.
It's a real world experiment playing out before our eyes. This is what it could look like, you know. And I think we'll try and explore that a little bit later. Go on then, on to our next topic. I'll let you off.
All right, thanks, mate. It's because it's catfighting. It's what we do. It's like handbags at dawn, where you have an argument, but it's not really a real argument. Except in this case, there is $100 billion involved.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah. So there looks to be a bit of a catfight emerging between Jensen Huang, Sam Altman, and Oracle, where they're basically coming out and going, "Oh, we all love each other," but that's because there's been lots of little snidey comments about how we all hate each other or we want to pull back. It started, I believe, I'm willing to be like, I might have missed something here. It started when there were rumors that Jensen Huang was pulling back, or Nvidia was pulling back investment in OpenAI. Jensen then said, no, we're still going to make a very significant investment in OpenAI, one of the biggest investments ever. And they said, oh, what, the 100 billion that you said? He was like, no. They said, but you said 100 billion. I said up to 100 billion. They said, oh, no, I think you said 100 billion. And then it got all catty. So there's a little bit of fighting over how much Nvidia are going to invest in OpenAI. And then there was a really interesting news story that I saw on Reddit, and I don't know how valid it is or whether it's true, that OpenAI were then slagging off Nvidia chips, saying they weren't really fit for purpose for some cases. Where that came from, I don't know. but then that's caused this kind of big reaction on social media of all these people going, no, we love each other, guys, honestly. But it's turning into a little bit Game of Thrones like, people fighting with each other, and who knows where it ends up. And what's true and what isn't is up for debate, but that's half the fun. So I'm very much enjoying following this.
I think the second I'm looking at news coverage right now, and it is dominated by, well, there's no rift. We love each other. We work together forever. And it reminds me a bit of, hey, it's not your fault, and mum and daddy still love each other, but daddy's going to live with his secretary.
Well, it's also the UK politics. Like over the past few years in the UK, there would be a scandal involving a politician. The first thing that would happen would be like, I have full confidence in this politician, and then the next day they'd be fired. It's that sort of thing, isn't it?
It's such a shame that we don't get what used to be the case. I think globally, but particularly in the UK, because we just had so many shamed politicians.
Yeah,
frankly, always up to no good. Is kind of the family outside the front of their front gate, being like, no, we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, it'd be like, no, it's not going to work. So I just quickly Google, because 100 billion is a lot, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's, I don't know if you realise that, Duncan. That's a lot of money, 100 billion.
I think, to be fair to Jensen, I think he might have said up to 100 billion, but it just goes to show
so it could be a pound.
Yeah, it just goes to show that all these numbers being flung around and affecting our pension funds are just wishy-washy, like concepts of a plan that don't really mean anything at the moment.
Well, there was that brief period. I mean, people called it the circle economics of AI, wasn't it? Where they're all pumping up each other's valuations effectively by doing exactly that. And it seems to have sort of ended right now. So Oracle, I mean, briefly, the CEO of Oracle was the richest person on the planet because of that activity, and then it kind of it collapsed back down again to something reasonable. But according to this, at the end of October 31st, 2025, Nvidia had 60 billion cash on hand. So which is a ton of money. But I do wonder whether or not your CFO, when you've said that, might be like,
you what, mate?
100 billion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was thinking about investing that sort of money, sure, my bank manager would be like, no, you don't have that,
Yeah, my bank manager's super chill. He's like, look, that £5, you put it where you want, buddy. You put it, up to you.
But yeah, maybe it's the start of something happening and people pulling back and a bit more rational behaviour. Who knows?
This goes back to a lot of our analysis that we've published, which is, and we always say with this caveat, we are very focused on OpenAI. Sorry, Sam, I'm sure you're a lovely guy, but it's the bellwether.
I'm sure he's really bothered. I'm sure he's really bothered.
Oh, he cries. You saw how he treated that journalist. He probably reads. That's our viewer on Short Fuse. Makes so much sense now.
It does.
We know who it is.
Yeah.
Sam, come on. But one of our conclusions was we did a big piece just before the end of the year, and we looked through some of the things that could cause OpenAI to catch a cold or sneeze, I think was the analogy we went with. And this could be one of them. This type of infighting is enough. And that would drag on Nvidia, Oracle, and a lot of other folks as well. I mean, they would be fine. Nvidia, people are always going to buy computer chips and stuff like that. So Nvidia will be fine. It's not like they're going to disappear anywhere. But a lot of their valuation tied to these companies is a future that isn't necessarily going to happen. And what I keep reminding myself is we're kind of 3 years into this, and a lot of it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that kind of Moltbook, how much it truly costs you. The reason that can happen at the scale it is no one's paying for it. The true cost of having your agent dox you, or, either voluntarily or involuntarily, is free, more or less. It doesn't really cost you anything. Whereas it does cost the infrastructure owner, OpenAI, Gemini, whoever, quite a significant amount of money. And would we see Moltbook and all of that engagement and all of that silliness if you did have to bear that full cost? And I would still argue probably not. You probably wouldn't have people doing it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we said it's interesting. I've said it again. It's
actually nuanced.
It is worth watching on a number of things. I feel like we're in this period of the AI boom where there's a bunch of experiments going on at the moment to see the viability of these things long term. So you've got the advertising within ChatGPT that we mentioned in our last episode, which is everybody's going to sit back and just see how that goes. If it's a success, we'll probably see more of it. If it isn't, who knows what will happen to OpenAI? But it's certainly not going to make up the numbers that they need to make up. The second is Moltbot, Moltbook, OpenClaw. Like you said, the amount of agent interaction, how much that costs, how valuable it is, the amount of negotiation that needs to constantly go on, whether people actually find long-term value in it or if it's just a little hobby for now. I would wager that Moltbook is a nice little hobby, interest, peak hype, whereas Moltbook and OpenClaw and the actual agents interacting and doing stuff is a bit more long-term. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So the last one I want to talk about is Apple's latest acquisition. Have you seen this? QAI, which is a startup that can listen to you without you making noise.
Oh no!
So it uses micro expressions, the tracking of micro expressions to transcribe speech. So essentially, it's like non-invasive BCI, but it's based on it. You can talk to somebody just by kind of it interpreting your micro expressions when you're thinking what you would want to say. I think is how I understand it. So if I was wearing a pair of Apple smart glasses and I wanted to talk, and you were wearing some, we could essentially speak to each other without making any noise. Now that could also go for, I could actually know what you're thinking about me without you having to say it and go, well, I didn't know you thought I was very handsome, Ollie. Thanks.
This is where, so first of all, I mean, I guess people do give off signals to each other all the time. And there's a subconscious kind of communication between people all the time, isn't there? Which is, apparently 90% of what you communicate is how you say it and how you present the information rather than what you say it. So I guess there is a lot of data there. But the part I find challenging is, why do we trust it? Why do we trust the AI thing to get it right? Like, what if it does say, and Duncan, hey, look, honestly, I think you're a good looking chap. Personally, though, I'm not often thinking, oh, what a handsome boy.
He's singing it all the time.
Yeah, like if someone says, what do you think of Duncan? I might say, oh, he's, bright, curly haired young boy. Why not? But I don't know if I'm exuding that round the clock where AI is going to be like, oh, he's looking at you again, Duncan.
I think the idea is that because they've also, part of it is about boosting speech. So if you're whispering, or there's a very noisy environment and you want to listen to what that person's saying over there, like boosting speech. So from an accessibility perspective, it feels great. I don't know whether the technology works or not. I've got no idea. Apple have decided to invest $2 billion in them, or buy them, for $2 billion. So they must see something there. But I guess the idea is that if you want to dictate something or have a conversation, or I don't know, speak to an AI agent, you could just kind of switch and move. I don't know how it would work.
It goes a bit to the BCI use. I can imagine there are a lot of people where, for a variety of reasons, this would be very useful in their ability to communicate, because they can't communicate in other ways for whatever reason, right? So I can see it being very, very useful there. I can also see it, so we've gone full circle, being very useful for government surveillance.
Yeah, sure.
Right, more so than anything else. I think if we were in a pub and I couldn't hear you, I'd be like, should we go outside? I can't hear you. So turn the music down, for God's sake. I'd be one of those guys. I don't know if I'd... Right,
actually, let's have a conversation.
Let's have our AI.
Look me in the eye.
Yeah, that part. And there is a part of me, and I'm sure it feels like there are companies like Apple which are constantly being scrutinized for not having a Gemini or an OpenAI that have to regularly announce, like, oh, we're doing this. Hey, trust us. We're going to have this new feature. It's going to be really good, and we're going to buy it. And I wonder if this is one of those. I don't know, but it just feels odd to me that once again, outside of people who struggle to communicate, and this is a very useful capability for them, we're outsourcing a very human thing to AI again. And I just don't, in my experience of AI, I just don't think it'll get it right most of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it will cause loads of situations. It's a bit like having a 10-year-old kid on your show. Oh, he fancies you. No, I don't. I'm just listening to,
How
like,
dare you?
yeah, he hates you. He hates you. I was like, no, I don't. It's my wife, for God's sake. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, there's a bit of hate there sometimes, but most of the time it's okay. Like, I just don't trust that AI interloping into human interactions to a greater extent. I don't necessarily think, like, what's the problem it's solving?
Yeah. We'll see. They must see value in it. The last acquisition of this sort of scale by Apple was Beats, which was $3 billion. And I guess AirPods and their headphones have all come off the back of that. Whether that feels like a valuable investment, who knows?
I didn't think Beats were good headphones.
I think they used to put weights in them to make them feel heavier. Even they were hollow, didn't they?
Remember Skull Candy headphones? They were all the rage for a bit, weren't they? And they weren't good headphones, but they looked cool. And I think that was the Beats thing. Quick one, just while we're on the acquisitions, what do you think about SpaceX XAI? What are your thoughts on that? Are you all for AI-enabled spaceships?
It's moving money around, isn't it? It's just moving money around so you can just inject cash. I saw something about space data centers being mentioned. The idea that you could have a space data center that could be cooled accurately enough and could have a low latency enough data transfer between space and Earth, and but that just the cooling and getting out there. There's no such thing as a space data center. It's absurd. I think
it comes up all the time. Space data centers. That seems to. It's another one of those.
Surely
ones,
radiation. Like you couldn't. It just wouldn't. It's not possible.
There's so much garbage floating around in space. Genuinely, things get hit all the time just by the amount of crud up there. So you put one of these giant gigafactory size space, it's going to get battered. Battered. I'm not sure about that. And I think this to me looks less like the grandiose, we're going to pull these things together and they'll be complementary, and more like, well, we're going to IPO. And frankly, I'm not, if I was on the board, I'm not certain these individual companies are worth that much. So if I package them all together, then they'll be worth more than the sum of their parts.
Well, there was news, wasn't there? So like didn't XAI acquire X? And now SpaceX is acquiring XAI, which has X.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absurd. Like the whole thing is just moving pieces around to like generate liquidity or stock movement or something. And then they've said that they're stopping various models of Teslas to focus on humanoid robots. You and I have our opinions on humanoid robots that go and listen to our robots podcast. But again, it's a stock price based on a promise that isn't necessarily ever going to happen. And I don't know what to say about it. It's just, these things baffle me quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I find Elon Musk a quirky and an interesting young man. Listening in on, that's code. Actually, if you're British, people are like, "Oh my God,
yeah." No, we won't get started on that. But I think you can all imagine.
It looks to me like exactly what you're saying. It's a way of like trying to pump the valuation. So like, I've just acquired this bit of my own company that I valued at 1.5 trillion. The IPO will be interesting if we ever get there, to see how much the market values it, because obviously X was bought for an extraordinary amount of money, and then the public perception of its value nosedived. It's worth a fraction of what it is. And it's FYI, the closest I've ever been to an influencer was on Twitter, and I got rid of it because it was,
and I think
bad for my brand.
SpaceX is interesting because SpaceX has value because it is sending people to the International Space Station. It is reusable rockets and stuff like that. It's the closest that he has to a properly valuable company, I think, other than maybe Tesla, but then that's nosediving at the moment. And I don't think he's going to get the same from humanoid robots. I think that's a waste of time, personally. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and Starlink's also part of SpaceX, isn't it? Which has a lot of promise. I think that as a telecommunications network, I think solves a lot of problems that existing telecommunications networks don't solve. But
Can you just say
we'll see.
telecommunications again? Because
Telecommunications. I stopped saying it halfway through, and I don't know why. I don't know why. I thought I got away with it. Sometimes that happens on a recording, and I submit it through to whoever it needs to be, and I feel like I've got away with it, but clearly not.
Yeah, no, you never get away with it. See, now I can't talk.
Now, what's the bet? I don't want you to cut that out. So what happens here, listener? What happens here, listener, is Duncan comes across really well, in many parts because he's naturally eloquent, but also because he removes anything that makes him look silly. But I'm louder and more visible whenever I look silly, and I enjoy this short, and it's me just looking glum, or why do I do this to myself?
All right. Well, that was an interesting, nuanced chat. I feel, don't you, Ollie?
Interestingly nuanced.
Yes, it was
nuancedly interesting.
All right, we'll be back next time for another podcast. Thanks for listening. See you soon.
Cheerio.